Now, this might look rather frightening because it is pure code, but one of the things we wanted to show in the interactive is when donors stepped up to the table, when they first stepped up to the table, and we consider them staying there the first time they started donating. So if you look at the original data, it's not really structured for that. So what we want to look at is we want to look at for each donor the first date that they donated and only count them for that date because what the visualization produced was a cumulative graph, and that is done in the actual Viz library which the Guardian Interactive team built themselves and custom made for it. So what we want as an output file is we want the date and a count of the unique donors for that particular date. And so using Google Spreadsheets or Excel, you'd have to do that by hand. And this is 150 data points, more than that, more rows than that, a couple of thousand. It would just not be worthwhile and you could make a lot of mistakes. So the best way to do this is by actually coding it. In R, putting in things that aren't there and taking out things and ignoring things is very, very difficult because as scientific data goes, you usually don't want to do that, but regular everyday data journalists, we work with dirty data. So I will supply this code for you. You can download it, and if you put it into the same folder as the data sheet, as the CSV itself, then all you need to use is this. If it's in a different folder, just make sure that you give the path name to begin with, user/username/desktop/ and then the name of it. So these are a couple of things we're going to use particularly for this effort, which is we're dealing with CSVs and we're dealing with dates. So I've got datetime and dateutil. These are programming libraries, and if you think of a library, think of a mobile phone app. Each library that you use is like downloading a new app for your phone. It gives you much more functionality, but it's still the same device. So first of all, I'm opening up the dataset, and I'm pointing to the dataset and saying go to the next row because the first row will be the headings, and that's not where the data is, and I want to analyze the data. Now, I've commented all of these to tell you what it's actually doing. But first of all, I'm going to run it, and I've done print statements at certain parts of the run, and I'll go through exactly what that is producing. So if we go to the terminal, I have navigated into the folder, and I will run it by saying Python unique donor parser.py. And these are the print statements, so let us go to the top and see what it's producing. So the first thing I've asked it to print is data dict after I've gone through the spreadsheet. Now remember, this is programming, so the first column is actually column 0, not column 1. So we go back here, this is column 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm interested in column 0 and column 4. So the donor is column 0, and the donation date is column 4, but I'm changing this date to be in the format of year as 4 digits, then month, and then day. This is called ISO format, and this is where you want all your months to be in, really, because whenever you do a sort or order in, we'll put it in chronological order, because the year, month, day, the later the year, month, day, the bigger that number is. And so I've gone in and I've gone through each donor and I've made it point to all the dates with which that donor has donated. So let's check. So this is Brazil, and this is all the days in which it's donated, and then it's Canada and all the days in which Canada has donated, which is actually quite a lot. Okay, so this is the first data set that I've made for out of that CSV, and now I'm going to rework that because I don't want the donors at all, I actually want the dates. So I want the dates to point to the unique donor for that date. So what I have done is I've gone through and I've sorted this list. So I've gone through and I put it in chronological order. It's in ISO format using this line here, which is donation dates dot sort. And then I've plucked out the first one and said use that as this key and then point it to all of the donors that have that one as its first date. And so if we scroll down, it should be starting here. See, I have a date, and then I have all the donors, the unique donors. So sometimes, usually there's one, but then sometimes there's two donors. So this is when they came to the table. But this date set is not the full range of dates, so I don't get a proper timeline. So I now have my donor dates as the date and then the list of unique donors. What I want to do is I want to put in the dates that are missing and give an empty list, because that will make a count of 0. Because what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to count the number of donors that appear, and that is done actually by asking the length of that list. So I've made a date range, and then I've made a date range, and then I have put in that date. If it's not in my data set, I will add it in and give it nothing. So, and I've made sure that that date is in the same format as year, month, day, ISO format. So, and then I print it out again. So let's go back, scroll down. Yes, it started here, and you can see there's lots of dates that are empty lists, but then Faroe Islands in that date. So then it's gone and filled it in. And now I want to write that back into a CSV so that a visualization can be built on top of that. But the next step is actually sorting it out by date and printing it out, which is what we have here. And I don't want the list of donors, I want the number of them. So I've gone and calculated that every time I write it out. So yes, this is a bit far advanced. If you're not programming, this will be of no use to you, but you can download this piece of code and you can run it and look in the console each time it's done something. This is Python. There's many different languages with which you can do this. But at the end of the day, this will give you an idea of whether you want to take time to actually learn to program to manipulate data in this way, because one, you've got more control over it, and two, you can actually really manipulate data, which certain software won't allow you to do, very, very large data sets. And three, you've got control over it because you can analyze it and print it out at each various steps. And if you're going to build a lovely interactive visualization like The Guardian did, you want every step of the manipulation to reformatting it, to feeding it in, to be in one place so that it is as transparent as possible and people can check it. This is your source, and it makes sense to have your source open so that everyone can check and see what you're doing.